Are you ready to hear an inspirational hero tale about one of our four-legged friends? My name is Kim, and this is Harry Hero Tales. Welcome to Harry Hero Tales, Animals to the Rescue. I'm your host, Kim. Today we're going to be discussing a hero named Reckless. Now there are 4 keywords needed to start this story. United States Marine Corps. Not sure what vision you get or feeling you have when you hear those words. I can tell you what I think of. Discipline, focus, strength, fearlessness, and the best-looking dress uniform ever. The few, the proud, and I see Marine One. These are the guys and gals who stand at perfect attention outside of the helicopter as the president steps down onto the lawn of the White House. What I don't see, but given that I was raised by a United States Marine, I should have at least known about, was Reckless. When I say I was raised by a Marine, I mean it was embedded into our DNA. Almost like another member of the family. And my dad wasn't a career Marine, but it was there, to the core. And the fact that until I saw a documentary a few years back, I had never heard of Sergeant Reckless. And it still kind of shocks me. On top of a Marine Corps house, I grew up in an animal house. And if you're listening to this, then you probably get what that means. Growing up, our house is where a dog is family and completely spoiled. The fact that I hadn't known the amazing history of this Marine is what inspired this podcast. You see, Sergeant Reckless is a Marine who also happens to be a horse. To tell the story of Sergeant Reckless, we have to go back to a complicated post-World War II, circa 1945. The victorious Allies, which are led by the Big Three, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the Soviet Union, well, they're coming to an understanding of what will happen to Korea. You see, Korea had been annexed and under Japanese control for roughly 35 years up to that point. But with the surrender of Japan to the Allies at the end of World War II, the Allies wanted to set up a transitional plan for Korea until they were ready for self-rule. The United States made the proposal of dividing the Korean peninsula into 2 occupied zones, one occupied by the Soviets and the other occupied by the United States. And the proposal for how to divide it was to divide it along latitude 38 degrees. So if you're not sure what that means or where that is, Google the word latitude and you'll be able to find it and see where it is on the map. So by 1948, the Allies had agreed Korea would be divided along latitude 38 degrees, which also became known as the 38th parallel, and they would become 2 sovereign states. So anything north is now a communist state called the Democratic Peoples of Korea, and south is the Republic of Korea. There was tension on both sides with each wanting to unify as one nation, but under their own leadership and political beliefs, which were diametrically opposed and still are. Then in 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, which began the Korean War. Enter our hero, or in this case, heroine. Sergeant Reckless was born in 1948 in Korea and was a chestnut-colored Mongolian mare with 3 white socks. Her Korean name translates to morning sun or flame of the morning. Her nickname before entering the Marines was Flame. She stood at 14 hands and weighed approximately 900 pounds, so she wasn't a very big horse. Purchased in 1952 from a racetrack in Seoul by U.S. Marine Lieutenant Eric Peterson for $250, she became a trained pack horse and part of the 5th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division within the Recoilless Rifle Platoon and Anti-Tank Company. Her main role? To carry supplies and ammunition. The Marines named her Reckless after the rifle for which she carried ammunition, the recoilless rifle. This rifle was so dangerous, the Marines named it the Reckless Rifle. The ammunition she carried weighed 24 pounds per round. Most often, she carried 6 rounds, so roughly 144 pounds. Fun facts about Sergeant Reckless. She loved Coca-Cola. She frequently went into the tents of her fellow Marines to steal any food she was able to find. She'd eat just about anything, even her own blanket, which they had to replace multiple times. She did not like being excluded from a conversation taking place among her comrades, and she would often walk into the middle of a conversation circle to make sure she was included. Ultimately, she served in several combat actions and even carried wounded to safety. The sergeant was incredibly smart and well-trained. So much so, many of these pack trips she conducted on her own. That's right, no handler, no rider. Just Sergeant Reckless following known paths that she had taken a few times with a handler. I've had a horse of my own and been around them quite often in my lifetime. Most horses I know could easily find their way back to the barn on their own, but not much beyond that. And I can only imagine how smart and special Sergeant Reckless was to travel within a combat situation along a path all by herself, just to find fellow Marines and deliver much needed supplies or ammunition. Among her many missions is a particular one to remember about Sergeant Reckless. This occurred during the battle for Outpost Vegas in March of 1953. In a single day, Sergeant Reckless made 51 trips by herself, carrying supplies to the front lines. Horses bolt when they're frightened, but not Sergeant Reckless, clearly. The route that Sergeant Reckless took to deliver these supplies and return with wounded soldiers, this included a sharp incline of approximately 45 degrees. And at that time, they'd loaded her with more than her typical load of ammunition. So instead of the usual 144 pounds, she was actually carrying 200 pounds per trip. During 2 of these trips, Sergeant Reckless was actually wounded by shrapnel. But she kept going. One of her fellow Marines described seeing her in the distance that night. So she was backlit by orange flame of the fire and smoke. She was carrying the next load after many that day, and she was climbing that steep hill in the darkness all alone. And she didn't stop until they gave her the order to stop. She was the first horse known to have participated in an amphibious landing. And having been wounded twice during the Battle of Vegas, she was awarded 2 Purple Hearts. She was also awarded a Good Conduct Medal, a Presidential Unit Citation with Bronze Star, the National Defense Service Medal, a Korean Service Medal, and a Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation. These and other medals she would wear on her horse blanket. Hopefully she never ate any of those, but her blankets were replaced. Sergeant Reckless became a celebrated hero after the Saturday Evening Post published an article about her on April 17, 1954, while she was still in Korea. Americans were so inspired by her service and her bravery, they campaigned to have her brought to the United States. An executive of a shipping freight company offered Sergeant Reckless free transport to San Francisco, where she arrived aboard the SS Pacific Transport on November 9th, 1954. And as if it was meant to be, on the United States Marine Corps 179th birthday, November 10th, 1954, so the very next day, Sergeant Reckless set foot on American soil for the very first time. In 1959, she received a promotion by the Commandant of the Marine Corps to Staff Sergeant. Sergeant Reckless enjoyed her celebrity as an honored guest on many television shows and in the Marine Corps celebrations. She was even featured in Life magazine as one of America's top 100 all-time heroes. Sergeant Reckless had 4 foals: Fearless in 1957, Dauntless in 1959, Chesty in 1964, and an unnamed filly born in 1965 or 66 who died after birth. Exactly 6 years after first arriving in the United States, Sergeant Reckless was officially retired on November 10, 1960, at Camp Pendleton with full military honors and remained there the rest of her life with free quarters and feed in lieu of retirement pay. Sergeant Reckless died in May of 1968 at the age of 19 or 20. There are several monuments in her honor where you can go and pay tribute to her service. There is one at Camp Pendleton, one at the Kentucky Horse Park, and one is in Semper Fidelis Memorial Park at the National Museum of the Marine Corps, and this was unveiled on July 26, 2013. There is a lock of hair from her tail at the base of the statue. The plaque contains a quote from Sergeant Wadley, who served with Sergeant Reckless during the Korean War, that sums up this remarkable Marine so well. The spirit of her loneliness and her loyalty, in spite of the danger, was something else to behold. Hurting, determined, and alone. That's the image I have imprinted in my head and heart forever. If you are interested in learning more about Sergeant Reckless's early life or extensive details about her time in the Marine Corps or while in retirement at Camp Pendleton, I highly recommend 2 books: Sergeant Reckless by Robin Hutton, which I listened to on Audible and I found it riveting, and Reckless, Pride of the Marines by Colonel Andrew Gear. While that only touches the surface of this amazing hairy hero, we have to leave it there for this episode. If you know of a great hairy hero tale and would like to hear it on this podcast, email us at hairyherotales@gmail.com. For more information on this program, visit our website, www.hairyherotales.com. That's TAILS.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcast. This is a Southpaw Productions podcast, edited, produced, and hosted by me, Kim Hagel. Opening and closing music provided by Mary Selvage. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Selvage613 for her live show schedule, and check out her complete catalog of music available on Spotify, Apple Music, and more. And remember, there are hairy 4-legged heroes all around us. Who knows, you might even adopt one. I've adopted many little heroes from some amazing animal rescue organizations, and I've featured 2 on my website: the All-American Dachshund Rescue and the French Bulldog Rescue Network. If you are looking to rescue your next hero or would like to help with transport or financial support, I highly recommend both of these organizations. Neither are affiliated with this program in any way, but both have my sincere gratitude and support. Thank you to all the heroes of the world, and a special shout out for hairy heroes everywhere.